Hello friends of Powerhouse Bakery and all my favorite divas and dudes out there. I'm so glad to have you in my bakery this morning. My name is Suzanne Parker and I'm the founder and CEO of this crazy little bakery that loves to show the world that healthy can and does taste amazing. And what I want to show you today is a little bit about the allergy around wheat. And so many of you know that Powerhouse Bakery was started to really help people understand gluten-free and what that means as far as the flours that we choose and really what it means around food allergies and intolerances. And this beautiful little dish that I'm going to show you how to make today is a lemon scone. And while I am going to show you how to make it gluten-free, and of course I'm going to show you a vegan and which means dairy-free and egg-free option, I want you to know that not everybody has to eat gluten-free. I want to tell you a little bit about the differences between a food allergy and a food intolerance. So the difference here is that a food allergy is really involving our immune system. So the IgE, or one of the immune cells of our body, is actually overreacting. And that's why we get some histamines produced, or it's this chemical in our body that's trying to slow down and kind of encapsulate the foreign body. And so whether we have an allergy to pollen or cat or dog dander or a food, it's really our body's overreaction to whatever is in our system or that we're registering as a foreign body. The difference is that food intolerance is not involving the immune system. A food allergy will have a few interesting characteristics. For one thing, we know that it, like I just mentioned, it involves the immune system. A food allergy is oftentimes genetically inherited. And so we know that it has something to do with family, and it has something to do with the environment that we grow up in. So what we have found is that food allergies and allergies in general will vary depending on the region that we're in. And oftentimes too, food allergies will be more pronounced in children. And as our immune system gets stronger, our bodies are not going to even have that allergy anymore. We've even found that early introduction to some allergens seem to help the body build an immune system, so those antibodies, to that potential environmental toxin. So, for example, if we grow up in an area that has a lot of wheat growing in the fields, some people in that region might develop an allergy. If they're exposed to it quite a bit, sometimes that allergy is overcome and the body goes, oh yeah, I know that. We don't need to sound the alarms anymore. It's not as high risk as we thought. And so the immune system is really unique in that it can react and it can overreact. Genetics is, of course, a big part of it because so often our genetics is going to predetermine the proteins in our body and how those proteins respond. Now, the other thing about food allergies is it's pretty rare, actually, to have food allergies. And there are certain foods that tend to be more common in a food allergy than others. We have heard of kind of the main ones, and that would be eggs. Sometimes we hear about it happening more with soy, nuts, and of course peanuts. These are all typical food allergies. And sometimes we even think of these as being an intolerance. So an allergy, like I mentioned, is very specific. We're going to see a body response. It's going to happen very quickly too. A food allergy doesn't come on after a couple of weeks or a couple of days. It's much more commonly going to hit us within 1 hour. So if you have an allergic reaction to shrimp, for example, you're going to have something as severe as an anaphylactic, which of course is very dangerous. And that's a result of the body's tissue swelling. So those histamines build up in the tissues and cause a swelling to occur, which could be so detrimental that it affects our breathing. It could also be maybe a little less severe, but nonetheless irritable, which would be maybe a skin rash. So whether it be a rash or it could be severe swelling, this allergic reaction happens quickly. And it's our body building up, like I mentioned, that immune response to try to protect our body from that so-called foreign invader. Now, let's look a little bit into a food intolerance. This is going to happen a little bit slower, and it's also going to be a little more vague. A food intolerance does not include the reaction of the immune system. Instead, it would have something to do with perhaps not enough enzymes in the system. I think a good example that we can all relate to is somebody that has diabetes, has an intolerance to sugars. Their pancreas does not produce enough insulin, or perhaps their muscle cells aren't able to respond adequately to the insulin that they do have. So their body has an intolerance to sugar. We know that when a diabetic eats a large amount of sugar, their reaction is quite different than a food allergy, right? It's an intolerance. And so symptoms can be elevated blood sugar, and of course chronic over time will then affect the small capillaries and venules of the retina and of the kidney and other organs and cause problems. That's an intolerance to the sugar that's in their body. It's not really a toxin. The sugar is still important and actually very necessary for the body's function, but it's an intolerance. Now, let's talk about the wheat intolerance. Right now, there's a lot of interest in food allergies. And here I'm trying to show you that there is a lot of confusion when people go to get a food allergy test. What are they really identifying? Sometimes they'll have a skin test done, which in fact is looking at an allergy. So a skin reaction is looking at what is the body's response to that food, not an intolerance. We can't really test for an intolerance by doing a scratch test on the skin because it's over time. So when we look at wheat, most people are feeling that they have an intolerance or they have a problem with wheat. And why is that? So lots of conjecture. But oftentimes the nutrition and food experts will say that because of the protein in the wheat, people are having an allergic response. Probably not. Allergies to wheat are actually quite rare. A true allergy to the wheat. And again, we're talking about the protein component of wheat. And there's actually about 20 different protein components in wheat. And so that's another topic of, well, okay, which wheat is it, or which protein in that wheat? But let's suffice to say that skin tests and even blood tests are looking at an immune reaction that's honestly pretty rare. Now, when people take out gluten from their diet and they actually feel a lot better, what are we seeing? Well, we're seeing that somehow they are having a sensitivity. Food sensitivity is a whole nother ballgame. Sometimes people will eat a very large meal at Thanksgiving perhaps and feel sleepy and feel like, gosh, it must have been the tryptophan. I have a problem with turkey because of the reaction it's given me, which is I have to sleep for the rest of the afternoon. Probably a whole different topic, right? But food sensitivities are starting to become a real conversation. And what we understand is that there's a lot we don't understand. When people take in a food and they have a bad gut response, there could be a lot of things going on. It could be a volume situation, just like turkey dinner. Too much of anything could cause some GI intolerance. It could also be an ingredient or an additive in the food that truly is causing a histamine reaction. So it's not to the wheat and it's not to the actual food, like somebody is allergic to Chinese food or the MSG. They're probably having a dose sensitivity to that food. And so if they had a small amount of it, the body probably wouldn't have those negative side effects. So now we've introduced a food sensitivity as well as the food allergy, which again is fairly rare, and it tends to really hit those big food items, nuts that you probably wouldn't grow out of. It certainly could be eggs and soy and of course even wheat. If somebody has been diagnosed with celiac, it's because they have identified the cells in the small intestine that have definitely a genetic propensity for that histamine or that reaction that causes the immune system to overreact. So I hope that's helped you kind of see. And the reason why I want to bring it up is a lot of us that might just have a food sensitivity or even an intolerance, you could probably manage to have a little bit and also feel just fine, which is really a great thing. The other good part about understanding this more is now that the industry is starting to grow more organics, we're starting to take better care of our crops and of course the soil, and we're really rotating those crops better and augmenting the soil because so many people are looking for organics. We are in fact getting a better quality wheat, which is good for all of us. So having said the dose sensitivity and the types of foods aside, we know that if we have a better product and a better organically grown wheat, you're probably going to do better with it. So it might be worth experimenting with some of the flours that are out there now that are not the enriched, highly processed wheat flours that we used to cook with a long time ago. And when I started to develop this recipe for the scones, I realized that wheat is pretty awesome. It does give us a great texture to a scone. And so when we look at these beautiful scones that I made at my home, I did use a blend. I used a bread flour that was all organic and very coarsely milled, and I used some cassava. So this is kind of a hybrid example of a scone. And what I'm going to show you today is the true gluten-free version, because as you know, here in Powerhouse Bakery, I have made the commitment that we are 100% gluten-free, but we're always learning. And really what I want to do is not only learn about how our bodies respond to food and the differences between an allergy and intolerance and even a food sensitivity, is how do we modify all these different flours that we have at our disposal to make a great tasting product that our whole family can enjoy. So here we go. This one is going to be made with cassava, and it's a blend of coconut, millet, tapioca, and brown rice flour. So it's a pretty good combination. Again, gluten-free, and I'm also going to show you the variations to make it vegan. So here is my beautiful dough. So with scones, it's a pretty thick dough. And it's really important that when you do blend this, you follow the instructions. So the butter needs to be not melted, just room temperature. The sour cream can be right out of the fridge. And you're going to mix your butter and sour cream first, making sure it's really creamy. And then you're going to add in your dry ingredients. So I'm going to show you all those steps. So let's get started. What I'm going to do here is show you how the end product, the beautiful dough, is going to be topped. And of course, I've added some wonderful lemon extract as well as lemon zest. Lemon scones are the best. I have to admit, I think I like them better than pumpkin. I know we're in pumpkin season, but lemon is awesome. And it's good any time of the year. So what I'm going to do is get my tablespoonful and I'm going to press it in so I get that beautiful topping. And I'm going to slide it right onto my parchment paper. Because scones need to be kind of rough. They need to not be too formally shaped, in my opinion. So I'm going to press it in, and at the end, I can always put a few more dabs of that beautiful topping on there. I think scones have to have a topping, whether it be a light glaze or some crumble of nuts, or in this case, I'm just using some coconut sugar and oats, and of course, a little bit of butter. They have to have some topping. And it's okay if they kind of fall off, because you know those little pieces that fall onto the pan are so good to nibble on. You know, QA and all. Have to make sure it tastes good. So I'm going to show you one more, and then I'm going to get into business and make you this wonderful batter. So again, press it in, and then just slide it off. And nothing wrong with kind of pushing all those little goodies right on top as well, and just make them look kind of rugged and rustic. See how pretty those are going to look? So I'm going to pop these in the oven, and then we're going to get busy mixing. Okay, here are my flours. So this is going to be a very light flour blend. This is tapioca, and a little bit of brown rice. And then here I've got some coconut. And so again, you're gonna wanna find your own flour blend. Of course, you can always buy one from Powerhouse Bakery that is a gluten-free, but I recommend if you're looking out at the store for one, get one that is a very light blend. Not too much coconut or a nut flour because it'll make it too dense. The cassava is gonna be the one that's pretty dense. So let's go ahead and start blending these. So this is my flours. So cassava, millet, brown rice, tapioca. Aren't those beautiful? And then I've got my leavening agents. So there's 3 teaspoons of baking powder. Baking powder is really important to go with acidity. That's going to help give it a nice texture, and it's going to let it rise just a bit. And of course, a little bit of salt. So I'm going to mix my flours first. Always think about getting each ingredient well mixed before you go to your next, because we don't want to get a bite of salt. I always have to remind my bakers how important it is to mix each section. And with a scone, we're going to have to make sure that those the sugar is blended in with the fats before I add in my dry ingredients. So those are off to the side, and I've still got my sugar, and now I'm going to add in my fats. And I want to show you how I do the measuring. In the recipe that I'm giving you, it does call for a half a cup of butter. And notice here, it's always a little trick. It gives you the measurement for 1 stick is a half a cup. So every once in a while in a recipe, I might slip and say 1 stick of butter, but just so you know, it's a half a cup. And again, you want it to be room temperature. So this one's pretty cold. I just got it out of the fridge, and I always try to keep some that's been sitting on the counter because you don't want to have to put it in the microwave and melt it because it really changes the texture. So I've got a stick of butter that is room temperature, so it's not mushy, but it is soft. So I'm going to drop this in, and then I'm going to measure out my sour cream. Now, there are some really great vegan dairy alternatives on the market today. There's a fantastic cream cheese. There's also sour cream and butter. Earth Balance is probably my favorite as far as a butter replacement, and there's several good sour creams. So it's not a bad idea to experiment and see which one you like the best. And when I do my measuring, I always use a flat spatula to make sure that I'm leveling it off. With baking, it is important to be pretty precise as far as measuring. I even really get on my team if they leave a lot inside the container. When you're measuring, you gotta get every little bit. And so at home, you can certainly use a clean index finger if you want to swipe it out, but of course the spatula works really great too. Okay, so I'm gonna fit my KitchenAid whisk mixer right on top there, and I'm gonna whip it up. Goes pretty fast because again that butter was just right. Now I'm going to add in my sugar. So the sour cream, butter, and sugar are the wet ingredients. And now I'm going to add my favorite part, which is the lemon. So the first thing we always do is zest before we get the lemon juice. So it is beautiful and ready to go. Now I could just put this right into, actually I think I will. I'm going to put it right into the bowl so that I don't lose any little piece. Just zest it right in. You don't really have to measure. Just get as much as you can. Tap it in as you go, and try not to get the white. Just get the bright yellow right at the surface. That's going to be where all those natural oils start to burst with aroma and flavor. It just makes a recipe so good. You know, it's a little secret. On our Berry Crisp, we use about 4 lemons and 2 more oranges. And that's how we have that wonderful flavor that's bright and a little bit sweet, but just loaded with great citrus flavors. And then you really need less sweetness. In this particular recipe, it's not very sweet. The scone by itself is already not a real strong sweet bread. And then, of course, at Powerhouse Bakery, I always figure out ways to reduce the sugar more. And so I've encouraged you to use an organic white sugar for this recipe, just so it kind of stays in a light texture. But You can certainly substitute some with non-nutritive if you prefer, or even coconut sugar. All right, so there is my juice. My rind is now done, and I'm going to get my juice. It's also a good idea to go ahead and squeeze right into another bowl, because you're always going to get a few seeds. So try to avoid those going into your batter. So full juice of 1 lemon minus the seeds, plus all the beautiful zest that you can get. And of course you can measure it. These lemons are fabulous. This time of year, usually lemons are just bursting with juice. So if you wanted to measure it, if you were worried that perhaps it wasn't going to give you enough lemon juice, you can count on it being about a 1/4 cup. And so if you need to use a second lemon, go right ahead. I'd probably even put in your recipe 2 lemons, but that could be just because I want to make sure you have plenty. So there we are, and I'm going to fold back those seeds and pour in this beautiful juice. So now I've got my juice and my wet ingredients, and I'm going to slowly add in that flour. And then probably at the very end, I'll finish off the rest of that lemon. You'll probably have to scrape halfway through putting in all your goodies, because you want to, again, make sure, even the best KitchenAids usually have a little section down at the bottom where the batter tends to accumulate. So you put it down on very low, or you can turn it off all the way, and just gradually add in your flour. A couple scoops at a time is really all it needs. Now, if you do have a flour blend that you've purchased commercially that's gluten-free, you don't need to have one that has xanthan gum or the xanthan gum or the arrowroot. You really don't need to have any of those in a scone, because you have enough fat in this type of batter. Those thickening ingredients are more important when you're doing something that's really delicate, like a cake or a cupcake, where you want to have a good crumb and there isn't as much fat. This is a pretty hearty dough, so it's really a nice one to work with. Same thing with muffins. If you're using a flour blend that doesn't have xanthan gum, you're A-okay. All right, this is getting there. It looks absolutely gorgeous. I want to show you how beautiful this works too. And you want to get that batter that's fairly dry. I'm going to add in that last little bit of lemon. Holding back my seeds. And again, adjusting your batter. If you need to, you can always add a little more sour cream. Again, if you're not familiar with the type of gluten-free flour that you're using. Now, if you want to make it with wheat, it's so much easier, because there isn't all those nuances of the different flour blends that you're trying to monitor. So this batter looks so pretty. Now you can also add the mighty seeds. So in some cases, I leave the mighty seeds out if I want that really light, smooth texture. But a scone is rustic and rugged, and again, it holds up under the mighty seeds really well. So I encourage you to use it. If you wanted to try using a coconut shortening instead of a butter, you definitely could, or an organic palm shortening, you could definitely do that too. So the nice thing is there's a lot of options, and I want you to see how the scone texture is so critical. So I'm getting all the little bits off my whisk here. There we go. So see, it's fairly dry. I love that. It's got a good quality texture. And if you wanted to do some add-ins, you could do it right here. You could add in walnuts. You could add in maybe some whole cranberries. Oh my gosh, that just gave me an idea. I think that would be fabulous. So same idea. We're just going to create these little balls. And again, this dough is a little bit thicker than the one I made earlier because I used a different flour blend. So I really wanted you to get to see how versatile it truly is. And you drop it in, and you let all that good topping just fall right on top. And you can certainly add more in. You can even put some on the bottom. This is where it's like an added bonus. So it's just this wonderful little clump of dough that turns into a slice of heaven. So when you're ready to bake, Make sure you do use some parchment paper so that if you get any little droppings, you can pull them right off and they won't stick. When you're using either the Earth Balance butter or coconut shortening or, of course, real butter, it will stick because you've got some sugars going on there too. So parchment paper is excellent, and you can buy this at H-E-B, and it makes cleanup easy. Also, any of those extra little crumbs save because they taste really good on yogurt. So those extra little trimmings are always a plus. So there you have it. The little crumble on the top, I want to make sure I show you how to make that, or at least walk you through it because I know we're short on time. But this is just going to have butter and some flavor, so you could use the sweet spice from Powerhouse Bakery. You could use some cinnamon or just some more lemon zest. Another one I love is to use orange zest. So you got a little bit of orange on the top and a lot of lemon on the inside. It's a great balance. But there again, it goes very nicely if you wanted to add some cinnamon or cloves or allspice to this topping. And believe me, this topping is great in lots of different uses. So if you have any left over, keep it around and use it for adding to maybe your oatmeal in the morning or even your yogurt. So I hope this has helped you. And remember that food sensitivities are something that you really can control by eating small amounts of particular food that you're worried about, and also make sure you get a wide variety of antioxidant-rich foods that help you build your immune system so our body doesn't get overly sensitive to those foods that really shouldn't be a problem to begin with. So I hope that you're enjoying this time of year and make some wonderful scones for you and your family. Thanks again, and see you soon.